Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is John Viglotti. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for our next live presentation from TAOIF. Please note you can submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides, and you can also view companies' availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome our next presenter. He's Toby Pierce, Chief Executive Officer and Director of TAOIF, which trades on the OTCQX Best Market under the symbol TAOIF and on the TSXV under the symbol TAO. Welcome back, Toby.
Thanks, John. Pleased to be here today and presenting to everybody. So I'm the CEO of TAOIF. I'm sure many of you may know me, but we'll walk through this presentation over the next 20 minutes. Just up front, we have a capital raise ongoing, so council has advised me I won't be able to answer any questions around that capital raise. I refer you to the press release on SEDAR or on our website of November 12th, 2024 for more details on that. Some forward-looking statements, please read these at your leisure. So TAOIF is focused on Egypt in particular. We've been in Egypt now for almost 3 years and active there. We picked up our first concession in October 2022, and we've completed 2 financings so far with a potential third here that'll get settled in the next week. Big, strong board here, led by Abi Badwi. He's Egyptian by background, so he's been in and out of Egypt for the last 45 years. He's had multiple successes. I'll talk a bit more about him in a minute. Myself, I'm a geologist by background, been in the natural resources space now for almost 30 years. Keith Hill, another board member of ours, formerly of the Lundin Group and former CEO of Africa Oil. Gavin Wilson currently represents our largest shareholder, Meridian Capital, and they own about 19.9%. Management and directors on top of that 19.9% own an additional 13%. Sean Reynolds, he's a portfolio manager at Van Eck, and Tom Hickey is chief legal counsel at INSEAD, rounds out the board. I won't go through each individual here. Everybody's important, of course, but in particular, Sunil Gupta, he's our COO. He was responsible for drilling over 700 horizontal wells in his career and was in charge of a number of large water floods, polymer floods, frac programs, etc. throughout his career. 2 key individuals in Egypt. You need a very strong operating presence when you're in Egypt. Kamal Resk, he's our country manager and helps us navigate through Egypt. And then Samir Abadi. And Samir he's the former chairman of the joint venture between EGPC and Apache and has over 35 years of drilling. He came in and joined us after we had some drilling issues in Egypt earlier this year. So right now we're down around $4 million in working capital at the moment. As I mentioned, we've completed 2 equity financings, a third just about to complete. We have a royalty in New Zealand. We sold our assets in New Zealand in 2019. We maintain that royalty. It pays us approximately $1 million US per year. And we also have royalties across our former assets in Australia. The operator there has announced a successful gas discovery. So we're keen to see what they may be able to produce in the future. So on the right-hand side there, you can see that the focus and the timeline. We basically entered, we teamed up with Abby and his team in October of 2020. He brought across 2 new board members, Sean Reynolds and Tom Hickey, and several team members as well, including Sunil. We signed the concession for the Bed 1 field, our first concession in Egypt, in October 2022. we got going in 2023 with our first well intervention at bed 107. I will speak more on that in a minute, but we brought that online at about 150 barrels a day, gave us the confidence to move on to our horizontal well. We started drilling at the end of 2023 and got that well online in April of 2024. Bullet point 6 there, that the amount of oil that we produced so far, we produce oil every day now, so that's changing. We're now over 30,000 barrels a day of oil produced in the Western Desert. Consistent and stable, which is always good to see. So a bit on the track record. I joined TAG in 2015. It was we had almost 2,000 barrels a day of production. Chose to sell those assets. Returned 30 cents a share to shareholders in 2020, and refocused with Abby and his team. Now, the reason Abby's spent a bunch of time in the MENA region, of course, his first success was Raleigh Energy in Egypt itself. Of course, Abby speaks Arabic. He's Egyptian by background and is a geologist. Went on to run Bankers Petroleum. That was sold in 2016, and he subsequently went on to run a private company called Kuwait Energy, and Kuwait was sold in 2019. He was CEO there, and that's where he rekindled a lot of the relationships he has in Egypt currently. And Abby currently resides in Cairo approximately 8 out of the 12 months each year, and has been coordinating our operations there for the past 6 months. Egypt in particular, it's a very good place to look for oil. They've got about 600,000 barrels a day of oil production currently. It's been as high as a million barrels a day at points in the past. Good infrastructure from a access point, pipelines. It's a reasonably mature basin, so there are production stations. Good services from a service company's perspective as well. They are very pro oil and gas. They're desperate for more hydrocarbons. They consume approximately 1 million barrels a day, and they of course want to plug that gap in between and make sure that they produce as much of their own oil as possible. They're very supportive of the oil industry in particular, and have been very supportive of ourselves and our peers. So the Bed 1 concession is the first concession we picked up. It's in the heart of the Western Desert, so approximately 100 miles west of Cairo by air. It's right in and around some of the bigger producers, including Apache. Our concession overlies the Abro Shaft is what we're targeting. It's an unconventional formation, and it is the source rock for much of the oil in the Western Desert. About a 26,000 acre block, so substantial in its own right. I'll talk in a minute about another block that we've just picked up, or are in the process of picking up, and that will substantially increase our acreage position. So we signed a services agreement with BPCO, which is a subsidiary of EGPC. Why we were excited about this is we get about 62% of the revenues after we split with the government. EGPC gets the other 38%. Out of that, they pay all royalties, taxes. Out of our share, we pay for operating expenses, the capital program, and of course our own G&A, etc. The nice thing about this concession is it was formerly owned by Shell, so there's very good data, 3D seismic, 50 plus wells that have been drilled on it, very good logging. So we have a very good understanding of what's going on. There's also a facility nearby that has spare capacity. There's a camp there. So we've got a very good set of infrastructure around us that we can use. There's multiple points we can take our oil. We're currently trucking to a facility that's owned by a company called GPC, another government entity, and they have the capacity to take the oil that we're producing at the moment and any subsequent wells we bring on. We're now through the evaluation phase. We have the right to go on to phase 2. We've met all our obligations, and we will be looking at doing that in the near future. So really what got us excited initially and helps us maintain our excitement is this is very similar to the Eagle Ford in South Texas. It's the same age type of rock, roughly the same depth of emplacement, same type of lithologies, etc. The porosities permeabilities are actually we're finding are better in Egypt than the Eagle Ford. Our pressures are higher, of course, and most importantly, the water saturation. The water present in the reservoir is almost non-existent. The slight edge that the Eagle Ford has over us is that their oil is a lot lighter than the 28 degree API we produce. So far, we've had a good result out of our T100 horizontal well from the limited horizontal leg we're producing from. And we're getting productivity of approximately 1 barrel per meter. And the industry standard at the moment in South Texas in the Eagle Ford is about 0.3 barrels per meter. So quite a bit above in Egypt of where the Eagle Ford sits. So obviously the Eagle Ford has a lot of well bores and a lot of infrastructure. So the enhanced production we see in Egypt is very beneficial, and that's the reason why we're keyed in on this. I had quite a bit of interest from outside. We're talking with a number of other industry players they're keen to learn more, and we expect that not only ourselves but other operators in the region will start to really look at this Abarochef as a potential source rock and production rock going forward. And of course, once we drill a full 1,000-meter horizontal, we anticipate initial production rates of 1,300 barrels per day or greater. So the first phase of activity, you can see our concession, the Bed 1 concession there. It's outlined in the red. About half of it has good, well-mapped Abarochef. We know that there is additional viable acreage to the south. We just haven't done much work on that. The well control is coming. The operator that's drilling the deeper horizons has told us that there's some good intersections. So we're excited to expand the footprint, and I'll go through the resources in a minute. Our initial well was a vertical well, and then we moved on to the horizontal well. We see at least 20 follow-up locations as it stands today, and ultimately believe that this concession could host 50 to 70 additional locations from there. So the Bed 1 of 7, this was a recompletion. We went in and tested the formation in the bright orange in the middle of on the right-hand side. That's a log. The bright orange area, you can see it's fully saturated with oil. We know the oil's there. There's never ever been any contention around that. It's how do you get the oil to flow? And of course, we went in, did a defit test to see if we could fracture it nicely. That came back well. That came back with good parameters. Sorry. We fracked the well. It came on at a stabilized rate at about 140 barrels a day, and we produced over 9,000 barrels out of that well. We're about to move on to that location to replace a pump. We had a pump in there that burnt out, and we'll put in a new pump. We anticipate approximately 100 barrels a day when we bring that back online here in December. Of course, that vertical well gave us confidence to drill a horizontal. Had a few drilling issues early on. We managed to drill about a 300-meter lateral. We put 12 fracs into this lateral. Those fracs were anywhere from 15 to 40 tons per stage, and we got quite good initial flow back. It flowed back at over 500 barrels per day of initial production, stabilized in around the 400 barrel a day mark, 375 barrels to be exact. Produced it at that for a while, and then we had some issues with the pumps. We ended up changing our pump out and put in what's called a rod pump. And that's consistently producing at the moment and has been now for the last 2 months. The frac itself, you can see the pictures there, the frac spread. We managed to get a good operator to come in and frac for us, a group out of Saudi Arabia. It was the largest frac ever pumped in Egypt at the time, and it went very, very well. It went, that portion of our operations did very well. As I mentioned, we're now through about 30,000 barrels a day of production from this well. The resource summary, we had RPS complete a resource summary after we announced the block. We announced this in November of 2022. This is a resource. They gave us an initial value unrisked of 420 million based on what they saw and on oil prices at the time. Obviously, the key for us is the amount of recoverable oil in the contingent resource category. That still seems to be hanging together nicely. And why that's important is that, with what we've done in the activity, we're comfortable that we'll have a longer term producing project going forward. So, early stage, we've got 2 wells now producing from this formation consistently. They're hanging in there nicely, and there's a real chance that we can turn this into a very large resource play. Just wanted to highlight, we announced recently that we had a no objection letter. What that means is this is for a new concession. It's quite a bit larger, this concession, over 500,000 acres. It's in the Western Desert as well, east of where we sit. It's another government operator that runs it. We are fairly far along in that process and believe we'll be able to announce to the market the completion of that acquisition in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And there'll be much more detail provided at that time. We'll have a resource report and an activity program that we can share with the market. We're obviously very excited about our existing acreage, but of course, if you add another 500,000 barrels of Avrochef potential, 500,000 acres of Avrochef potential, that will add significant resources for the longer term. And of course, we're building this to ultimately get taken out in the future. So we want to build a big platform that would be readily saleable to a bigger, well-funded entity. We have looked in the broader MENA region. We're very, very targeted, very focused. We've looked at several other countries, but really the focus has been on Egypt and will continue to be so, we believe, in the next little while. So that's the presentation, and just really quickly on what we've done so far, and I'll move to the questions portion of the talk. I have a question here on: are there any geopolitical concerns operating in Egypt, and how supportive is the government of the industry? It's a good question. Really, the geopolitics, it's a very geopolitically active region, of course. Egypt itself seems to be, while it is nearby a lot of the conflict, they seem to be very stable relative. The government has been in power now for 2 terms and is in power for the third term. The existing president has done a great job in bringing quite a bit of prosperity to Egypt, and is generally well liked. So it has really helped with stability. They are very supportive to the oil industry in general, and are quite supportive on new entrants in particular. And so, of course, we're a new entrant, so we have done quite a bit of work with the government, and they take a big interest in what we're doing. I had a question here on what are our milestones for 2025, and do you have additional capital needs to support these initiatives? So the milestones for 2025, what we're focused on for the next while, number one, bring on our vertical well that's offline. Number two, close off the acquisition we're working on, that 500,000 acre acquisition that I mentioned. Number three, we'll launch more to the market in Q1, but and provide detail on how we're going to advance the new concession. But on our existing operations, new concessions, we see multiple wells, workovers, recompletions, and also the ability to go into older wells and recomplete the Avro Chef and get production up from there. Based on our current production levels, our anticipated cash flow, and once we complete the raise that is underway, we'll have everything will be fully funded for 2025 based on what we see today. There's a question here on what is the makeup of TAG ownership, insiders, strategic investors, etc. So currently, the largest shareholder, Meridian Capital, owns approximately 19.9%. Insiders own an additional 13.5%. We have a couple of institutions. There's one out of Toronto, Ontario, that owns about 9%. A couple of institutional groups that own in the 5 to 6% range, and make up the balance of the shareholder list. We're fortunate we've had a long history, so we do have a number of supportive retail shareholders involved that have recently big positions. Question here on, are you looking at other countries outside of Egypt? Yes, we have. We've spent some time on countries like Oman. Really do like the opportunity set in Egypt in particular, and in the region in general. I think at the moment we're very focused on Egypt, prioritizing. Our capital is sufficient, but we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. So, really trying to focus on Egypt at the moment. Question here, timing on the new acquisition. How long's a piece of string? We expect to be able to announce the market here in the next 6 to 8 weeks, where we sit with that presentation. With that acquisition. It's it's somewhat subject to the timelines. We're fortunate in that it's just the final sort of stamps and navigation of through the various channels. So there's nothing contentious holding us up. It's and we're excited to get that announced to the market, and we can provide more detail at that time. So I think that's the questions for today. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and really appreciate you taking an interest in Tag Oil, I'd encourage you to go to our website and social media. We've got a very good social media presence to follow further. If you have any questions, you can be reached at info@tagoil.com. And